The ancient geographer Strabo claimed the island could process 10,000 slaves in a single day. Not weapons, not grain, not precious metals. People. Human beings stripped, inspected, priced and sold at a pace that would make a modern factory supervisor envious. This wasn't Rome at the height of empire, nor Athens during its golden age. This was Delos, a tiny Aegean island barely 5 square kilometers, transformed from sacred pilgrimage site into the Mediterranean's most efficient human trafficking operation. What made one sacred island become the machinery of mass enslavement? The answer reveals how commerce, piracy, and imperial politics converged to create a system where a woman could wake up free in her coastal village and sleep in chains 1,000 miles away, all within a matter of weeks. Delos, the Aegean island that turned humans into cargo. For centuries before Rome arrived, Delos held a different reputation entirely. Greeks knew it as the birthplace of Apollo and Artemis, where the goddess Leto had found refuge from Hera's jealous rage. Pilgrims traveled from across the Mediterranean to worship at Apollo's temple, filling treasury chambers with offerings. The island accumulated such wealth through religious devotion that it became the central bank for the Delian League, housing the combined funds of Greek city-states allied against Persia. Then, in 166 BC, Rome reshaped everything with a single political maneuver. Fresh from victory in the Third Macedonian War, the Senate decided to punish Rhodes for its wavering loyalty during the conflict. Rhodes had controlled Mediterranean trade through its powerful navy and strategic harbors, collecting taxes that funded anti-piracy patrols across the Aegean. Rome declared Delos a free port, eliminating all customs duties. Merchants immediately abandoned Rhodian harbors for this tax haven. Within a year, Rhodes's harbor revenues collapsed from 1 million drachmas to just 150,000. The vacuum created opportunity for darker commerce. Without Rhodian naval patrols, pirates multiplied across the eastern Mediterranean. These raiders needed markets to sell their captives. Delos, now administered by Athens, but essentially operating as Rome's satellite, welcomed anyone with cargo to sell. No tariffs, no questions about provenance, no concern whether the merchandise had been legally enslaved through warfare or illegally kidnapped from their homes. The island transformed physically to accommodate its new function. Near the port, structures appeared designed not for worship, but for commerce in flesh. The Agora of the Italians, a massive colonnaded building measuring 60 by 40 meters with double-story corridors, allowed for efficient movement of human cargo from ship to sail. Recent archaeological work suggests the actual auction site stood near the port at the Agora of Theophrastos, where a circular structure called a kyklos displayed merchandise while buyers placed their bids. The population exploded to approximately 30,000 inhabitants on an island that could barely sustain a fraction of that through agriculture. Merchants from across the empire converged. Roman traders seeking labor for Italian plantations, Greek dealers, Phoenicians, Syrians, Egyptians, all came to profit from misery. The infrastructure expanded beyond auction spaces to include massive warehouses where slaves could be held before sale, and a network of temporary housing for dealers who stayed through the trading season. From capture to auction, the brutal supply chain of the ancient slave trade. The capture methods that fed Delos's markets revealed the systematic nature of Mediterranean human trafficking. Cilician pirates perfected the business model. Operating from rocky harbors along the southern coast of Asia Minor, their vessels could emerge from hidden inlets to strike slow-moving merchant ships, particularly the grain vessels that transported wheat from Egypt to Italy. These attacks weren't random violence, but calculated economic operations. Pirates struck coastal settlements with equal efficiency. Villages near the shore offered minimal defense. A dawn raid could net dozens of captives before any organized resistance materialized. Women and children made particularly valuable targets. Unlike adult men who might be sold for hard labor, young women commanded premium prices for domestic service, and many buyers paid extra for other purposes that dealers advertised openly. After the Seleucid Empire's disintegration around 150 BC, no naval power existed strong enough to patrol the eastern Mediterranean effectively. Rome possessed the military capacity but maintained deliberate inaction. Roman landowners needed slaves for their expanding plantations in Italy, and pirates provided a steady, cheap supply. The relationship was symbiotic. Pirates kidnapped, dealers profited, and Roman aristocrats acquired labor without asking uncomfortable questions about origins. Warfare produced another massive supply stream. When Titus captured the city of Jaffa during the Jewish Wars, he executed all the men and sold 2,130 women and children into slavery. After defeating Spartacus, Rome crucified thousands of rebels along the Appian Way, but many other captives were simply auctioned. Prisoners of war technically became slaves through legitimate capture rather than illegal kidnapping. But the practical difference meant little to those being sold. The journey to Delos meant suffering before the actual sale began. Captives were crammed into ship holds with minimal food and water. Dealers calculated losses from disease and malnutrition as acceptable business costs. Women faced particular vulnerability during transport. Roman law regarded slaves as property without bodily rights, and no protection existed against abuse by crew or dealers during the voyage. Ships docked at Delos regularly, disgorging their human cargo onto the island. Dealers moved captives into temporary holding pens, often just iron cages or wooden enclosures near the port. Here they would be sorted, appraised, and prepared for the market. The entire process treated human beings with less consideration than livestock, because unlike cattle, slaves could understand the full horror of their situation. On the auction block, pricing, inspection, and the ritual of dehumanization. The auction ritual began with systematic humiliation designed to establish total powerlessness. Roman law demanded full disclosure for slave sales, treating human merchandise identically to livestock. Dealers hung wooden placards called tituli around each person's neck, listing nationality, origin, skills, health problems, any tendency to flee, attempted suicides, and any legal claims the new owner would inherit. Women were displayed unclothed, so potential buyers could examine exactly what they were purchasing. This wasn't incidental cruelty, but standard commercial practice, legally required under the principle of full disclosure. Buyers would approach, inspect limbs, to test muscle condition, examine teeth for age and health, check for scars or deformities. Those captured from abroad had one foot whitened with chalk, marking them as foreign merchandise. The practice's exact purpose remains unclear, but it served to categorize human beings like any other imported goods, making their status as property visually unmistakable. Pricing revealed the market's brutal calculus. Age, health, skills, and appearance all factored into valuations. A skilled slave with specialized training in literacy, accounting, or medicine could sell for 6 minae, equivalent to 600 drachmas. Unskilled laborers fetched far less. Young women commanded varied prices depending on physical appearance and the dealer's assessment of their potential uses. The auction itself proceeded like any commercial transaction. An auctioneer, the preco, would present each person or small group. Buyers could interrupt to ask questions, demand the person turn around, or demonstrate physical capabilities. Women being sold as potential domestic workers might be asked to display their hands, evidence of whether they had experience with household tasks or were simply field workers. Roman law protected buyers through a 6-month return policy if undisclosed defects appeared. This created pressure on dealers to reveal known problems, but also incentivized them to minimize issues during the actual sale. A slave could be returned for a full refund within 6 months or partial refund within 12 months, treating human beings as defective merchandise subject to consumer protection laws. Some dealers specialized in deception. If they couldn't guarantee a slave's condition, the person was made to wear a distinctive pointed felt cap called a pileus, warning buyers that this purchase came without warranty. These unguaranteed slaves typically sold for lower prices, as buyers discounted the risk of hidden health problems or violent tendencies. For women specifically, the inspection process carried additional invasive elements. Buyers concerned about pregnancy or reproductive capacity might demand even more thorough physical examination. While explicit details aren't preserved in primary sources, the complete lack of bodily autonomy meant women endured whatever inspection buyers demanded before making their purchasing decision. The auction concluded when the highest bidder claimed their property. No ceremony marked the transaction, no acknowledgement that families might be separated or lives permanently altered. The auctioneer documented the sale, the buyer paid the dealer, and imperial tax collectors recorded the transaction to claim the 4% sales tax that Emperor Claudius had raised from Augustus's original 2% levy. Survival after the sale, the fate of women beyond the slave market. What awaited women after the auction block varied dramatically based on who purchased them and for what purpose. The lucky ones, if such a word applies, entered households as domestic servants. Wealthy Roman families needed slaves for countless daily tasks: cooking, cleaning, childcare, weaving, carrying water, attending to the family at baths. A woman purchased for these roles might develop skills that increased her value and marginally improved her treatment. Domestic slaves lived under constant supervision but